Hello and welcome. As America's presidential candidates present themselves to the powerful American-Israel lobby AIPAC, the stalemate on the ground in the Middle East continues. In Annapolis, Maryland, late last year, the Bush administration did manage to bring Israelis and Palestinians together for face-to-face talks after a disruption of nearly 7 years. Committees were set up and the leaders of both sides agreed to meet regularly, but prospects for a breakthrough look dim. The Israeli government continues to add roadblocks and expand settlements in the West Bank, weakening support for the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. And Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, who was in Washington for meetings with President Bush, is facing legal troubles back home, which threaten to bring down his government or force his own party to replace him. So today we ask, where does all this leave the peace process? Don't forget, we take your calls on this show, and you can reach us at the numbers at the bottom of your screen. Joining me here in Washington, D.C. is Dr. Nabil Abu-Zunaid, the Palestinian Chargé d'Affaires to the United States. He was a long-time advisor to the late Palestinian President Yasser Arafat and has taught at the universities in the West Bank. Also here is M.J. Rosenberg, the Director of Policy Analysis at the think tank Israel Policy Forum. He's worked as an aide to several members of Congress and also worked in the 1980s with the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, but split with them over policy towards the Palestinians. Gentlemen, welcome both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, first, if I could start, Dr. Abu-Zunaid, with you. There's not a lot to be optimistic about, is there? I mean, even the U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice has tried to sort of lower the expectations of what might be achieved by the end of the year. Let's just listen to quickly what she said just now about this.
We still believe that we have a chance to reach an agreement on the basic contours of a peaceful Palestinian state. I know that this is ambitious, but if we can pursue this goal by the end of the year, it will be an historic breakthrough for people who believe in peace. The goal itself, though, will endure beyond the current U.S. leadership.
So clearly managing expectations there. What sort of signal do you think that sends?
Well, let's look what happened after Annapolis. After Annapolis, over 1,800 houses were approved, houses. Over 800 were tendered. 484 Palestinians were killed, over 1,600 injured. Humiliation on the checkpoints and the roadblocks continuing, which we have over 600 of them. What does that, that will take us? Unless a miracle will happen, we will see a progress.
All right, well, M.J. Rosenberg, good to have you here as well, sir.
Thank you.
For you, what kind of message does Dr. Rice's message send out?
Well, I think that she is being overly optimistic. I don't think there's much chance of anything happening for the rest of this president's term. And I think that, realistically speaking, I don't think anyone in Washington seriously believes that there'll be any changes in terms of Israel-Palestinian policy until we have a new president.
Are you surprised of the way Iran seems to keep cropping up in almost every conversation, including at the AIPAC meeting as well?
Well, no, I'm not surprised, because AIPAC has made it their #1 priority. It's interesting to watch the Israel lobby is much more interested right now in Iran than they are in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It really, their emphasis changed. I was following closely what was going on at their conference, and there was more discussion about Iran than on anything else.
Which doesn't leave a lot of hope for trying to find some progress with the Israeli-Palestinian situation.
No, I don't think so.
Dr. Abu-Zunaid, if I could put an email we got to you that came in from Tanzania commenting on the current situation. This is from Linjembwa Kamote in Tanzania. The peace process in the Middle East is a true nightmare, and there is no way any progress can be made to reach a free Palestinian state. American officials always say, Israel is our true and good friend, and we will stand for them to the end. So they will never be good to the Palestinians. Let the UN play the deal and not the USA. Now, to what extent is that part of the problem, that there isn't enough of an international mix now? Even it seems the quartet's even gone quiet.
Well, on the American-Israeli relationship, we are not telling the Americans to abandon their relationship with Israel, but we are offering them a new friendship, the Palestinian state. And also the UN tried, and how many vetoes were taken by the United States. So I think the United States is playing an important role, and it should play an important role as well as the United Nations.
M.J. Rosenberg, we had an email that came in from Spain, if I could put this to you, from J. Sokoshko. It says, Israel is not really interested in peace because it thrives on the conflict. Because of its position of power and the millions of dollars it receives from the United States, the conflict has benefited and always will benefit the state of Israel. Now, do you really believe it's in Israel's interest to stay in a state of war?
No, I don't think so. And I think that most Israelis want peace. The problem is that a sizable percentage of Israelis, not the majority, but an important minority, prefers to maintain the occupation to achieving peace with the Palestinians. And it's going to be very hard for any prime minister of Israel to stand up to, I would call them the settler lobby, the right-wingers who would much rather hold on to the West Bank and even Gaza. You know, as we saw the demonstrations against the Gaza withdrawal, these people prefer land to peace, and that is a real problem.
I'll get on to the situation for the Israeli Prime Minister in a minute, but let me ask you what sort of baton you think the next president of the US has to pick up. What sort of issues, the prime issues that the US leader, the next guy in the White House or woman in the White House will face? Will be?
Well, it's not going to be a woman, I guess. But
well, of course now, I guess.
Yeah, I think now that it's down to, you know, Obama and McCain. I think it's not so much what specifically the next president will do, as much as it is whether or not he will be engaged at all. This President Bush has been so uninvolved with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. His way of approaching the conflict is saying to the Israelis, well, whatever you want, that's what we're for. The next president has to come in and be what we call an honest broker, to be a real mediator, not to have for the United States to be effective. It has to be trying to mediate the conflict, not just take one side of the conflict. Do I know that McCain or Obama will do that? No, there's no reason for real optimism on that score, but it's got to be better than Bush.
Okay, well, Dr. Abu Zunaid, you know, of course, the next president in the U.S. is going to have to pick up a mess, I guess, from what's left from George W. Bush. Of course, he inherited something of a mess from the previous, and it seems they pass it down. Is it going to be a bigger mess for the next president, or what do you expect by the end of the year?
Well, I think they have to understand that the Middle East problem, the Palestinian-Israeli problem, is the core of the Middle East problems, or the region, or the international. And they have to give it a serious attention, and they have to get more involved. And we understand their support to the Israeli security, but we cannot accept their support to the Israeli expansionism and occupation. So they have to give it attention, not to keep it on the shelf for many months to come, and then things will get worse.
Well, let's get in Patrick on the line from the United Kingdom. Patrick, what would you like to ask?
Yeah, I feel greatly privileged that you've given me an opportunity to express myself right
Pleasure.
now. Yeah, with regard to the Palestinian and Israel issue, my question is very simple. Why is it that democracy applied in other parts of the world is so unfair? Why is it that justice is unjustly just with regard to the Palestinian issue, whereby they expressed themselves and they voted a political party to represent them, who has always been rejected by America and rely on it?
Let me put this, Patrick, let me put this to Dr. Abu Zunaid. I mean, realistically, can the Palestinian side negotiate when it's only negotiating with half the Palestinian population?
I understand we have some problems now, but all the years we have one party and strong leadership, and also the Israelis ignored that opportunity. We have some problems now, but also it's caused by the occupation, and we have two groups of Palestinians, seculars, like seeing it through negotiations we can achieve the Palestinian rights. Also other groups thinking through resistance we can achieve rights. I think the issue is conflict between these groups on the rights of the Palestinians to achieve self-determination. The occupation is the cause of this.
Understandably,
and also I would like to add, how do you expect democracy when you don't have freedom? Freedom and democracy, they go together. While the Palestinians are not free, you don't expect a full freedom.
Fair enough, but then there's the issue of the Palestinian leadership, and I wonder to what extent you feel that you might answer those who feel the Palestinian leadership has let down the people by allowing this huge split down the middle with Fatah and Hamas.
Well, I don't think it's the leadership, it's the reality. It's how can I convince a normal Palestinian on the checkpoint, or he loses his land, wait, give peace a chance. It is very hard to convince the Palestinian that the peace process is working. If you take example, the Nakba anniversary, the 60th anniversary, it reminded me with the 60th and the 70s, how all these activities and the rhetoric, it seems like people lost hope in the peace process. And when we lose hope, and I think groups and people will become more radicals, and we lose control. And I think that we lost control because of the policies of the occupation toward the Palestinians in Gaza as well as in the West Bank.
Okay. Well, Chris is in Nigeria with a quick call before we take a break. Chris, what would you like to ask?
Yeah, my comment is a comment that there cannot be peace in the Middle East until the Israeli defense industry, which is benefiting from the crisis, stops benefiting. The Palestinians who is making money from the Arab country.
Okay.
Just stop peace.
I'll put this, MJ. This harks back to the question I asked before. To the extent that for many people the conflict it serves a purpose, and you know, here Chris in Nigeria is saying that the defense industry in Israel benefits from the situation continuing as it is.
Well, the defense industry in every country benefits from war. I mean, that is just a given, and it's always been the case. I think what matters in terms of the Israelis is the Israeli population. When the Israeli population is convinced that peace is more important than maintaining the occupation, we're going to have peace. I don't think it's the defense industry. It's the defense industry. The people will make the decision. When Rabin was prime minister, he convinced Israelis to take a chance for peace. That's changed.
Well, we have lots of people waiting on the phone lines as well, and we've got more questions. We're going to take a very short break here, and we'll continue our discussion on the current obstacles to peace in the Middle East after that. For those of you waiting patiently on the line, do stay with us. We'll be right back.